Hello and good evening, folks. This is the Acadia After Dark podcast. I am the Reverend Redbeard. Happy New Year's to you. I hope everybody had a safe and decent holiday. It's went from raining up here to and being 55 to Arctic chill. Like probably over the next day or two, it's gonna drop to being somewhere around the single digits to teens. So super excited about that. Not exactly because the heat bill is going to be ridiculous, but that's living in Maine. So, anyways, that's enough of my gripes for one episode. Well, I will have one more, but that's later. Anyways, I hope everybody had a good New Year's. It's already been a crazy start to the beginning of 2025. Following the local news, you really can't make this stuff up some days. It's like what, New Year's Eve they had the uh, apparent terror incident in New Orleans, and then the following day we had another terror incident at the Trump International Hotel with the Cybertruck exploding. Both of which seems like kind of setting a precedent for this year. Unfortunately, I don't know how I feel about that, but we're gonna keep on keeping on over here and just try and have some fun and talk about some spooky shit, because really, that's all we can do. Anyways, it's been a pretty good week as far as I had last week off in New Year's, so I got a lot of work done for the channel. I got a lot of stuff done on social media. I've been talking to some people, setting up some things for the near future. Just got some new reading material I gotta bust through in the next day or two here for a upcoming piece that we're gonna be working on. Be a little something to look forward to at the beginning of season 2. And we're gonna have. Well, I was supposed to talk to somebody today from the Bar Harbor Ghost Walk. I think they call it Bar Harbor Ghost Tour, honestly. The Blue Lantern people. And I was supposed to be talking to one of them. Unfortunately, a work schedule conflict arose. I wasn't able to, but we're going to reschedule that, hopefully sooner rather than later, so I can get them on for an interview. And we're going to also do some other stuff on the socials, because I think that TikTok is kind of, even though it seems to be holding on now, I don't know how long that's going to go on. I don't really trust the incoming administration to save it, even if they signal they will. And I certainly don't particularly care for what Congress and everybody in there wants to do with it. But I'm not going to get too political on that. When you got people that are trying to build platforms and stuff, and then you got people whose entire income is based off of that, it really sucks for them all to be on the hook for it if something falls through in the next month or two without really much else that can be done in the meantime. I'm not one of those. I'm trying to build a platform over there, but at this point, I'm kind of looking at the lay of the land and figuring YouTube might just be worth, they've got the shorts, they've got the live streaming down, they've obviously had the long form content down for quite some time. So maybe that's where we need to put our focus. The last couple of days, the last video on Big Cats there is the best performing video the channel's ever had so far. So thank you all that watched that. I don't know what that says to where that is coming from, because I haven't quite dived into it yet, but I'm excited, because if people are excited and talking about cryptids and mysterious things up here, I'm excited to talk about it. I can talk about that shit all day. No joke. So, that being said, I'm going to move right along to talking about the Big Cats episode, because that was a very fun one for me to do. It's one I've been waiting to do for a while because that was something I had personal experience with. It was also something that we had. Um, it comes up every few years. It seems if you live in Maine, it's every couple of years you'll know somebody that they see one, and it's not a, oh, I think I saw something. It's like we all up here kind of know they're there. It just doesn't. It just nothing's done about it, right? So what we have in this situation is I touched on it a little bit in the video, but I don't want YouTube to get weird. And obviously, YouTube did all right with this video because it saw cat video. I'm assuming that's what it was. And if that's the case, cool. But there was definitely, I was a little worried because when you talk to people in Maine discussing what's going on with why the national parks, the game wardens, government officials, biologists in Maine would want to say that there's no cougar population up here. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I mentioned a few of them in the show, but I ultimately, when you talk to most people up here, I think most people say that the reason is kind of rooted in what part of the problem why cougars went extinct in the first place, and that was the main logging industry. So due to like destruction of habitats and stuff like that was probably one of the leading reasons to cougars just straight up dying out in the Northeast. But when you look at it now, we've reforested most of the state. Cougars have huge territories, so to have them coming from Canada down or from maybe the Midwest over is not really outside of the realm of possibility to begin with. And it's been officially they were considered extinct back in 2011. Now, that was in the Northeast overall. In Maine, the last one, like a confirmed cougar that was found in Maine dead was 1938. So it's been a long time since we've had one confirmed here, but people do see them. I've seen them. Every one of my friends that spends any amount of time in the woods has at least seen tracks or I mean, more people I know than don't actually have seen them in real life, but that's a whole other level to it. It's not like it is with other cryptids, quote unquote. And that's, I think, why people get confused. Because cryptozoology is not always about going out to find Sasquatch or the Chupacabra or Mothman. Most cryptozoology is literally this, it's looking at creatures that either were extinct or were not thought to exist where they're known to exist. And then that is why we find so much success in the field. Things like the coelacanth and stuff like that are always stories that people point back to. But you can point to that on a pretty regular basis with a lot of other animals. We just recently had a rodent that was rediscovered in the last year that had been thought was extinct for thousands of years, and then they just found a breeding population of them in a pretty well populated area, honestly. So it's not, we can find that with a mouse. And people will look at that and they'll be like, well, why aren't we seeing more of the, why aren't we doing this with Sasquatch and stuff like that? Well, there's probably a lot of reasons for that, and we can get into that in other episodes. Today, I'll talk about the cat reasons for that. So, first off, when you're talking about big cats, again, they have large territories. So, this is not to say that they're going to have a population that's going to be very large right now. We could be talking a hundred cats. I think a breeding population would have to be something like upwards of like 40 cats. I could be wrong. I don't know if we would have that. Unless there's just, groups of them that move through. But honestly, I think it's more likely that it's a few isolated areas. Allagash Waterway is extremely remote. If there's cougars up there in those woods, no human being would see them unless the cougars wanted them to. And honestly, I would think that ones around here would be so afraid to interact with people that you wouldn't ever see one if they could avoid it. Now, the ones that I've seen in my area, because I know at least, I've seen one when I was a kid. I've also seen one as an adult, not far off from where I saw the original one. And these are in more populated areas, which makes you think people would usually point to maybe it's a bobcat. Well, bobcats, you're going to have obviously a few things. Bobcats are going to be a lot smaller. And if you've seen a bobcat in real life, you're going to know the difference. They're also going to have a shorter tail. Because bobcats, of course, they have the bobtail. So those are going to be two things that I mean, any person that's seen both of these animals is not going to confuse the two. And every person that I know that's seen a cougar knows that they've seen a cougar. It's not, oh, well, it could have been something else. It's 100% it was a cougar. So it couldn't be a dog in a lot of these instances. If you're looking at like the coloration and things, northeastern mountain lions were typically tan colored. They had like a white underbelly. Sometimes you would find some like darker brown markings, and they were significantly larger than most dogs. So you can see in the picture, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the picture I have up on the screen now. This cougar is larger than these two hunting dogs. Now, this was actually a photo that was uploaded at r/cryptozoology. You got the info on there. Um, Pretty handy feature they added doing that. But anyways, the thing with that picture, supposedly, this one was taken from a camera in Maine. Now, I have no context for this, and I haven't been able to track it to anywhere else. But I have to wonder, why are there two dogs hanging out with this mountain lion? Unless this is from a rescue or something. Okay? But that's not the only ones that I found. Now, this next one was a much more interesting one because this one I was able to track. And this one was taken from a trail camera up here in Maine in 1993. And that, to me, you can see the back. You can see, of course, if you look, there's very muscular build to the cat. And then when you look further back, you can see the tail behind it. So this, to me, looks more like what I saw, which I identify as a cougar. This, I believe that we do have. I think this is a legit one. I think that this is, if you want to call it a cryptid, you can. I feel it's an extinct species, or a thought extinct species, that has a surviving population in very remote areas, not very many. They may be breeding with other mountain lions, or they could be coming from other areas on their way through. But I do think that there's a presence of them here. And I recently found on a Facebook page that I frequent, I recently found somebody who reportedly had some hairballs or scat on their property, which they claim looked like mountain lion. So they have their boot next to the hairballs. The hairballs, I'll be honest, they do look like large cat hairballs. Now, any large cat, any feline in general, can produce hairballs. Typically, um, wildcats don't produce as many of them, and they're not as large because of the fact that they have a diet that more consists of meat, and their digestive system doesn't, it breaks down the hair a lot more. But when you have domesticated cats, they're going to get hairballs, and that's because they're obviously more used to a already pre-digested diet. They're going to be eating softer foods. It's easier for their bodies to break down. Therefore, the hair is not going to break down in the same way. So it gets clumped up in their stomach, their digestive tract, and they hack it up. Okay. With a large cat, you're not going to see larger hairballs in comparison to a large cat typically, right? That's why this one seems like it could be legit, but there's a couple of problems with it. First of all, there's no way without a sample of it and having an ID and like DNA tested, there's no way we would be able to know the difference between that or a bobcat's hairball. They're going to look essentially the same from a visual observation. Now, this person put their boot next to it for a size comparison, which is good. At least we know it's a relatively large hairball, so I would say it's bigger than what I would expect to come from a house cat that was just out wandering around their property. Not saying it couldn't have been. I had a Maine Coon cat that hacked up some pretty crazy stuff on occasion, so I could see it, but I don't think that's what this is. But I can't say definitively that I think it's cougar because honestly, there's just no way of knowing. It looks like it had been there a while. There were plants growing up around it and through it. It could have been there and dried out for a while, so maybe it was, maybe there was some more mass to it or something like that, and it would have looked larger. I don't know. Honestly, when I compare it to other felines' hairballs, it looks like a large cat to me. I'm not saying for certain what type of large cat, but the possibility is still there. And I think that Maine, if there's any possibility of there being large cats in Maine, I think the people here would know about it, and that seems to be what it everybody you talk to, they all have either seen them or have a story. They know somebody that's seen them directly. The whole reason that they probably would want to keep this somewhat quiet, as I said in the video, the tourism part of it is one aspect, and I can definitely say it's going to have some effect on it, right? But I ultimately think that the bigger reasons for it would be when you're talking the logging industry up here, which up until the last probably I don't know honestly. I mean, up until the last half century was one of the big drivers in Maine of industry, and they had a huge amount of influence. So if you're talking about what's gonna, pull the money and have the amount of say and sway, I would say that the logging industry would have a lot of it up here. And if you were to turn around and say, yeah, you have a protected species, another protected species in this state potentially, that's going to limit the amount of area that can be worked in. It's going to change a lot of the regulations and stuff that have to be adhered to. And it's going to make it a lot harder for people to kind of make money in the way that they want to, which is ultimately what a lot of these things boil down to is it's all money. What's going to be the bigger profit? Tourism is a big driver up here. Yeah, if you're going to kill tourism by saying, yeah, that we have, cougars around, I don't think that would kill tourism because people still go to places that have cougars all the time. I mean, it's just, that's part of nature. We have bears here too. That doesn't deter people from coming here and messing with bears. So I don't know. Either way, I just think it's one of those things that until they're willing to readily admit it and invest the resources, it's just going to continue to go downplayed. And every couple of years, we'll have another sighting. There'll be, a rash of reports. And then the rangers and the game wardens and the biologists will all just apparently gaslight us until we get through the next year when they've moved on to a new territory. And, oh, see, it's all fine now. But this has been the way it's been my entire life, and I'm sure it's probably going to probably be this way most of the next, you know, foreseeable future because I just don't see anything changing about the way that government operates when it comes to dealing with animals and things like that. So we'll see. I could be wrong. I'd love for it that somebody spots one definitively, a biologist or somebody that has that authority sees one, they get a body or something, they're like, hey, Okay, we can prove it. I would love to see that. That would validate me so much. And that's something I would like to see. Do I see it happening? Unfortunately, not. I wish. But that does kind of bring us on to another thing. Because while I was researching this topic, as well as some other topics for the next episode of Acadia After Dark, as well as some of the stuff that I want to just talk about today on this podcast, I keep running into certain things. And one thing that I've been fighting against, I said earlier I had an issue with TikTok and their moderation. So I recently had my account flagged for apparent misinformation. And I'm not going to gripe too much because it is what it is. Social media needs to be accountable. It's the way the law works. It's the way these companies have to work. It's the way that they protect themselves. Um, Honestly, TikTok does more to moderate its misinformation now than a lot of other websites that I've used do. And theoretically, that would be a good thing. But here's the problem: when you have AI moderation, it can do some weird shit. And this video that I posted, that was very obviously a joking, satirical video, short clip of drones from the previous podcast. This is the only site that this was taken down from. But they basically removed it and cited it as misinformation. The reason they cited it as misinformation? Because I claimed that Hulk Hogan of the NWO, the wrestling faction, was responsible for the drone conspiracy that was overtaking the east coast of the United States for close to a month. Now, let's ignore the fact that we're now pretty much being told, ignore the drones, there are no drones to see, which is wild because I'm still seeing videos sent to me every day, brand new ones that are authentic. I've been looking at plenty of them that I can dismiss. I've also, for every one that I've seen that I could easily dismiss, I will see one that I have no idea what I'm looking at. And maybe that's just me needing to be educated on certain new technologies. That could be. But it's, as somebody that lived next to an airport for close to a decade and somebody that has access to a computer with the ability to look up what this stuff looks like myself, I don't recognize it. Some of these drones being FAA regulated, that's obviously a big red flag, but some of this stuff just ain't right. Either way, I don't think that TikTok quite understood the meaning of the post when I was very obviously tongue in cheek saying that Hollywood Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, was somehow related to this. And that's fine. Hey, TikTok, your moderation doesn't get it. But here's what happened: you disagree with it, and they repost it. And then they take it back down. And so you disagree with it again. And then they reposted it. And about the third time that they reposted it, I stopped trying to appeal it. I said, all right, forget it. And that's when they flagged my account. Now, why? The post was already down. You had already approved it twice, then took it down 3 times, and then that's when it decided it was going to do something and flag my account. I honestly don't care. TikTok is not a moneymaker for me. I'm simply doing it for fun, and it kind of drives my kid a little crazy that I get more likes and views than they do. That's basically the whole reason. So that being said, if they want to take down a video like that I post jokingly, I honestly am not overly worried. But it feeds into something bigger, because while they're doing this, imagine the things that I could have been saying, the other people have been saying, and it just gets passed around on these sites and never gets flagged. And when you think of that, I'm sure at least some of you that are listening to this have all had that post that just makes you kind of scratch your head and go, why? And I think it's this AI moderation thing. I think they're missing a lot of stuff. And I just think AI, any potential benefit we have to it, is just kind of getting thrown out the window when you're doing stuff like this with it, right? It's not to say it doesn't have its purpose, it's just it ain't this. So we're going to move on. But there's another interesting phenomena going on the social medias right now. This one was a kind of an interesting one to me because Miss Redbeard actually turned me on to it the other day. She'll, on occasion, she'll come across stuff. I'm pretty in the loop when it comes to a lot of the weird news and conspiracies and stuff like that. But every once in a while, there'll be one that slips by me. And she caught this one. So she asked me, what's with this fog that everybody's seeing? Like, what's the issue with this fog? What is it doing? At first, I was like, well, I was like, yeah, I know when I got up the other day, the fog was really heavy. And I do recall when I got up that morning, I kind of had a thing where I was like, man, I was like, there's a really odd smell in the air. Then I just dismissed it. I drove to work. And that day, I actually even posted a video on one of my Instagram reels where I was basically just joking, saying I drove through Silent Hill on the way to the radio station that day, okay? Little do I know, the whole time that I'm joking about this, apparently people were all over the internet and coming up with different scenarios and posting some pretty interesting stuff. Some more interesting than others. But here's the thing, is this whole thing, it is weird. It is weird. And people need to recognize that. But people need to recognize the reasons that all these things are weird, right? So, I'm going to try and walk through what I know and what I found out about this whole fog scenario. So, as you can see, if you're watching on the YouTubes, you can see on my screen, I've got a collection. This was taken from r/Wendigoon. And basically, somebody took a bunch of screenshots from social medias. I believe it's all Twitter stuff, probably. That's what half these people seem to still be using. I can't stand the place. It's awful. Find me on every other social media but that. Meta's almost getting there, but not quite as bad yet. Give them like another 6 months to a year, and they will be there. But I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to pull that trigger yet. Anyways, the word on the socials was basically that from the UK to Germany to parts of the US, all experiencing incredibly dense, thick fog, abnormally thick in some of these instances. Now, I remember somebody I follow on Threads there had posted, lives in Birmingham, and posted a picture where it was incredibly foggy. But I always kind of assume that's just the way the UK is, right? That's just the way most of Europe looks. Well, apparently, no. To a lot of people, that was abnormal. Now, when I look at these pictures here, there's a couple of them that are more interesting to me than others. The main one is this here shot in the middle by, what is it, Truth Poll, okay? I'm not going to get into any of these particular accounts that posted this because when I tried to look them up, some things happened to my algorithm that I don't like. And I will talk about that after this, but I want to get through this part first. So basically, what I'm seeing in that picture is exceptionally large water molecules. Okay? Now, your typical water molecule is like 0.010 nanometers. Okay? A fog molecule, which is a visible molecule of fog, which is what causes you to see the haziness in the air during fog, can be anywhere from 10 to 50 micrometers in diameter. Now, what you see when you're looking and you see a layer of fog is you're seeing cold air interacting with hot air and moisture, which then causes water molecules to basically clump together. I know this is very, very basic stuff to some of you, but hear me out. This is why this matters. You're seeing a bunch of water molecules clump together. Those water molecules clumping together makes them have more mass, therefore they're more easily visible to the human eye. The light reflects off of that. It causes you to see it as a mist or a haze, therefore we perceive it as fog. Okay? So what was so weird about this fog that people were seeing the other day? The fog that the people were seeing the other day had two weird characteristics to them. It was much more visible, like the molecules themselves looked larger. And I can tell you from this truth poll post in the middle and from my own experience of seeing it, yes, it was probably the largest fog molecules that I've ever seen. That was the first thing that was weird to me, was that when it hit my windshield, it was almost like a mist. It was like if you drove by a park that had the sprinklers going. It was like my windshield got hit with that. Made little water droplets, okay? Struck me as odd too. I think it did for most people that observed it. If you were in the northern hemisphere, you were more likely to see it, and there's a reason for that. There's a little thing called climate change. Now, some of you are probably going to shut the stream off immediately, and that's fine. But what I need people to understand here is that all of this weather phenomena that we are seeing now, we've been being told for my entire lifetime that some weird shit was going to start happening. And we are in that phase where weird shit is starting to happen. It really is that simple in some of this. Now, yes, there's a conspiracy to all of this, as there is with almost all of the things that I talk about, that we talk about as a cumulative entity on the internet that is trying to understand the world around us. There's a conspiracy there, but is that conspiracy that some secret global elites are pumping chemicals into the air that makes them smell like nail polish? Not quite. It's close. It's not secret global elites. It's billionaires that we all know. It's our own communities in some cases. Right here in Maine, we have a factory that for the last several months has been pumping brown shit into the air, and everyone in the surrounding communities is fully well aware of that. You probably know that same story happening somewhere in your own state right now. That's the conspiracy we're looking for. It's not the NWO, it's not Hulk Hogan. It is the powers that be. The powers that be here are two things. They are rich people, corporations. This has been a hot topic of discussion recently, and it is the government that allows it. Now, what we have here is a couple of things. The smell that we're getting in this fog is a pretty easy explanation from that. Actually, my basis for this comes from my own background of study, and that is metrology. Now, in metrology, I do a fair amount of air testing. And a lot of that air testing requires you to simulate different types of environments to see the way air interacts with different things, okay? In this particular instance, I have used vaporizers to create particulate and then observed how it moves around in different environments. What we have here with this fog and why it is so incredibly dense is we have a particularly rare weather phenomena happening at a large scale. It's happening around the world because weather is becoming more and more global. Everywhere you look around the world, we're having snow in Texas, and we're having summer, and we're having 70 degrees in November in Maine. There's something going on. If you don't see it, I don't know what to tell you. But the fact of the matter is, the weird weather patterns are causing these phenomena that we don't normally see, which to us is going to seem like something that is alarming because it should be. This is stuff we weren't necessarily meant to see. If any of you have seen the videos of the blue ice that was visible from an iceberg that melted and flipped over, you might know what I'm talking about. We're in unprecedented times. I know people throw that word around a lot in certain aspects, but we are here, and I'm not going to be alarmist about this, but the fact of the matter is if people can't recognize things for what they are, and the very obvious and real conspiracy of the entire matter being that basically we have a bunch of rich corporations pumping stuff into our atmosphere that is causing very weird stuff to happen to our environment. Here's an example. We have this fog that has a weird smell to it. Well, if you live on the coast, you're probably pretty familiar with weird smells in the fog, and that's because the moisture is the same moisture that you're gathering off of the ocean, which is going to cause it to have an odor. The water molecules actually create a barrier that makes it more likely that scents carry longer distances and therefore are more easy to be perceived by a human's senses. Now, if you have that happening with something that's, say, being pumped out of a factory that's a few miles up the road, or you have something that's already in your water supply and then being vaporized and put into the atmosphere, those smells are going to carry when it rains, when you have fog, and other things. Back in the day, they used to talk about that and call it acid rain. Now, we're just having weird smelling fog. I'm not saying that's not bad. I mean, it could be potentially bad. Who knows? This could be something we look on 20 years from now. We're like, yep, that was a bad sign of things to come. But I don't know that. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm a, I'm a meteorologist. I'm not a meteorologist. I can only tell you what I know, and that's that the air moving that way is because of a particular environmental condition that was happening where you had two air currents that were basically meeting and were causing the air molecules to be, or the water molecules to be much larger because of the rapidity of the air mixing. Now, when the air mixes like that, what you're going to end up having is two layers. You're going to have the cold air and then you're going to have the hot air on top of it. So when you see that mix, here's what it's going to look like. This next shot, which I had queued up. No, no, no. Where'd it go? Not that. Did not do it. Alright, well, that's lame. Okay, well, there was supposed to be one more shot that was going to have that. And you can see a zoomed in one on one of the older photos. But basically, you're going to have two layers of the fog. It's going to look weird. Man, there's weird cloud bank photos you can find and stuff that is essentially the same thing, but it's happening in our stratosphere. We're going to see this more. It's not UFOs, it's not, whatever it happens to be. The drones have nothing to do with this. I know it all seems like it's all correlated, and some of it is, but not in the ways that people are immediately jumping to the conclusion of. Either way, I just wanted to try and clarify some of that. I'm sure there will be probably questions and people that will be like, well, what about this? And yeah, I'm happy to answer them. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'll do my best to fill in blank spots. I'm doing the best with what I know and what I'm able to gather for information. So if anybody else has contradictory information to this, I'd love to hear it. But from what I'm seeing, what I've observed with my own two eyes, as well as what I know about the way that things work, it's what I'm gathering. But on to one other kind of more personal topic, and this is back on the social media algorithm thing. So I think all of us have had that experience, okay? You hop on your social media and you're just trying to look up something fun for the day. Oh, I'm scrolling Reddit and I click on this post by such and such account. Oh, Wall Street Apes. Okay, I click on this account and I look at this tweet. Oh, ha ha ha, this is a tweet about the fog. Cool. I move on. Then the next thing that I know, I'm getting another post, and all of a sudden this post is, well, Elon Musk said this. Okay, yeah, he's in the news a lot. I can see how that would show up on my news feed, yeah. So I move on. Then the next thing I see, well, Alex Jones makes a really good point. And don't take that out of context because that is the quote of a post that I witnessed, and I almost I almost had to think, is this satire? Is this somebody from the Onion or something? And no, it wasn't. It was a real post. It was a post by a page that mostly posts stuff to do with UFOs and conspiracies and things that I'm very much interested in. And I heard this echoed by a comedian recently too. Because as long as I can remember, I have always been interested in UFOs and ghosts and cryptids and any conspiracy that you can imagine. What I have not been interested in is things that are actively harmful or detrimental to other living people, okay? There's a very defined line there. I believe in freedom for all. I truly think that every person should be equal. That being said, and not to divulge too much, but any person that is saying that someone that denied a school shooting happened and blamed the families of those involved as crisis actors does not make a good point. You do not need to hand it to him. And if you're an account that does, I am not going to interact with you in any positive way. That being said, there's a definite correlation between conspiracy-minded people, such as myself, and a more pliable mindset that appeals to certain political ideologies and influences. You will see it in every social media app that you go on. If you log into an app, you input your information, it links to your email, you will start getting targeted advertisements. You will also start getting suggested pages and other things to make you interact with them. If you are not familiar with the ideas of how algorithms work, then that is something you definitely want to look into. You also want to look into the way that companies will use them to create what I call pipelines to put you into certain boxes because it makes you easier to control, manipulate, and advertise to. Again, everything is a conspiracy, and the conspiracy is money because that's what all of this stuff boils down to. They want to make as much money as possible, and however they get to do that, the better. There's no way that they're going to be okay with all of this. So this will probably not be a video that does well. That's fine. I'm okay with that. What I do want to say before signing off is that if you're on social media and you see something and your first response is to get angry about it, think about why somebody would want you to be mad about that thing. And it gives you a lot more perspective on what's going on outside of that. Anyways, we're not going to keep on about that stuff. I will move on because we have fun stuff to look forward to in the coming weeks. Episode 10 will be the last episode of the season. Looking forward to doing that one. It's going to be a big one. I've been working on it for a little bit, writing. I think people will enjoy it. And I have even bigger plans for season 2. We've had a lot of growth. We just crossed, Blue Sky just actually blew up today. That was pretty cool. And we got a ton of new friends and followers over there to interact with. Threads has been, of course, our home base. We love the community over there, having a lot of fun. If you're not already following us on social medias, make sure you do. It's something that I like, the communities that we're building. We've recently been having a lot of fun with talking about the park and the things that aspire to live there. And I think people will enjoy. If we come back, season 2 is going to have a little different of a vibe at times, but I think people are going to enjoy it. Also, we're going to have new shorts coming up. I'm going to work on a few that are going to be a series of maritime mysteries. So it's going to be like ghost ships, nautical mysteries, things like that. Okay. We're also going to have some shorts I'm going to be doing. This is going to be talking about the fearsome critters of Maine because they fit pretty well into a short format video. Not so much into my long form content that I've been trying to stay up with. But they're definitely fun, and I think people will like them. Like the Dingball Cat that I mentioned in the Big Cats video this past week. That's just a really neat, weird cryptid that comes straight from the colonial era, like logging industry of Maine. And I love those type because you can imagine the time and the mindset of people and how they would be influenced to come up with a story like that. And it's just so cool and interesting to me. So I'm really into telling those stories. I hope people enjoy those videos once they start coming. I think we'll start seeing the first ones of the Maritime series this week, and then we'll probably see some of the Fearsome Critter stuff starting the following week after that. Yeah, I'm not sure how many of each we're going to do right now, kind of keeping it open ended there to see how people respond to it. I have a ton of material to go off of because I absorb this stuff like a sponge, and I've lived here my whole life, so it's just been entrenched in our culture for so long. I can't wait to share it with people. Um, Aside from that, we do have some further plans. Like I said, we have that interview with people from Bar Harbor Ghost Tour. Super looking forward to that. I want to get that done and have somebody hear from them because they do so much cool stuff there. The people with the blue lanterns, I really dig what they do. We're gonna have probably more stuff going up on YouTube, TikTok. I'm kind of putting a back burner to it. I might stick to doing one video on there a week or something like that, but the YouTube stuff, you should see basically steady content there. I definitely want to be streaming over here on YouTube. I think it's just a better format for me overall, and Twitch feels like it just feels greasy over there. Every time that I stream on Twitch, I just feel bad afterwards, and I don't like that feeling, so I'm just gonna get away from it because if it doesn't spark joy, what are we even doing anymore? we have no time for this anymore. So if it doesn't, do yourself a favor and do the thing that makes you happy, because that's probably the best thing you can do right now. Anyways, I'm not gonna keep yapping too long. We had a pretty good episode this week, so I'm gonna keep it under an hour. Hopefully y'all have been enjoying the big cat video. If you haven't, head on over to YouTube, check it out. Drop us a subscription on that. We're almost at 40 followers on YouTube, which probably doesn't sound like much to most of you, but to me, that's pretty cool, seeing how we only started in October. So I'm looking forward to that growing, continuing to produce new stuff and try new things is the goal with all of this. So next season, we're gonna have some new things. We're gonna be trying the channel. Gonna have new stuff for the live streams as well. I want to get a little more interactive stuff going on either way. Hopefully, y'all be on board with it. So, as always, if you haven't already, like and subscribe on the YouTube when that comes up live. If you're listening on the audio platforms, go on and drop us a follow. Rate us if you can. I think we're up. I think on Spotify you can. If you just listen to the podcast over there, you can. I don't know if there's a time period on the other ones because we're trying to get on more streaming platforms. So as that goes, I will make more announcements on that. Hopefully, y'all had a great holiday. Beginning of the year has already been a real one. It's gonna be wild, yo. Anyways, it's been Acadia After Dark. I'm your host, Reverend Redbeard. Keep your lanterns lit. Stay spooky. Talk soon.